Welcome to Alternate Ending, where we're discovering good movies, one bad movie at a time. We have a very special episode for you. It is, as you're listening to this, potentially Tuesday, the 4th of March, which means we've just had the Academy Awards, the 97th Annual Academy Awards. So we're here to talk about that ceremony. We have postponed the newest episode of Your Movie Rocks, but that will be coming up next week on Tuesday, the 11th of March. In the meanwhile, I am your host, as always, Tim Brayton. I am here with two friends of the show, Caleb and Cameron, both of whom are from California, which I assume means you were both at the ceremony last night.
Yes.
Yeah, I was invited by many people. All the stars in my life.
I had front row tickets and just felt compelled to give them to the less fortunate.
Like, are you the one who gave Timothée Chalamet his tickets?
I don't want to name names to protect the innocent, but
of course. But yes, so we are here to talk the Oscars. And I think let's just get right into it. You know, we want to make sure we get to the good stuff. So I think whenever I am tasked with talking about the Oscar ceremony, I always try to delay the really good stuff, which to me is complaining about the awards, by talking about the show itself. So I just wanted to ask you both, what were your feelings about the telecast of the 97th Academy Awards?
You know, it did not bother me the way past Oscar broadcasts have bothered me. It felt like making the choice to not sing all of the best song nominees was, I thought, good. They did replace it with like 3 song numbers that I didn't really think were necessary, but I feel like often many of the best song nominees are terrible songs, and people just get up and go to the bathroom during those songs, and that made everything feel less disjointed. You know, you didn't pause the ceremony to just watch Lady Gaga sing a song for 5 minutes. We just did that twice with the James Bond thing and what was the other one? The
Wiz?
Yeah, straight. There were 2 Wiz songs in this movie or in this broadcast, and that was odd.
Yeah, I mean, I think the second Wiz song was ostensibly, I think, the In Memoriam for Quincy Jones, but that's already confusing because Quincy Jones was not present in the In Memoriam scroll, and it was not clearly. I had forgotten that he died, and I think they did not remind us that he was dead, which feels like
It felt like it was a Lifetime Achievement Award.
It did feel like it was a Lifetime Achievement Award, and that it almost felt to me like we were singling out Quincy Jones less because he is an icon and more because he happened to have written Wizard of Oz themed music on a night where we were going all in on Wizard of Oz because I'm pretty sure Wicked had grossed more than the other 9 Best Picture nominees combined at the time of the ceremony.
Probably true. Yeah.
I don't know. Complete Unknown might throw that out a little bit, but that would be it.
I would hope that Dune 2 would throw that out.
Oh, Dune 2. I keep forgetting.
Oh,
Dune 2 made a lot of money.
Yeah. The other thing that bothered me about the telecast itself was for the In Memoriam, which I actually thought was a good In Memoriam. I don't like it when they don't fill the screen with the picture of the dead person. When the camera is in the balcony and we're watching the In Memoriam montage, that bothers me because half the time you can't even really tell who we're looking at. And if you're my parents watching, you can't read who we're looking at. And I was watching with my parents, so that was a problem. Yeah.
Sure. I do appreciate anytime they do the In Memoriam montage where they just play sad music and they don't have a pop song, which feels like that's a trend they've been moving towards in the last several years. So them not doing that made me very happy.
Yeah.
What really threw me about the In Memoriam specifically was it starts with Morgan Freeman talking about how Gene Hackman died. And at the time I was like, oh wow, Gene Hackman just died like so recently that surely they just didn't have time to cut him in. This makes sense. This is the way you talk about him. And then he ends the montage as Gene Hackman. So it basically felt very much like the meta narrative was, well, Gene Hackman is the king of the dead people this year. So he is the one we're going to like really focus on. And I do not care for the way that sometimes the dead people montage at the Oscars feels a little bit like a a contest to see like,
Yeah.
ooh, who's the coolest dead person who goes last?
Yeah.
Or friends with the most people here, which
Yeah.
is a lot of the vibe on it. Like, I mean, Gene Hackman, huge presence, like massively important actor, tons of movies. Makes sense that somebody would speak about him. But at the same time, we get all 2 seconds of David Lynch in passing,
Yeah.
like no
Right.
acknowledgement of his history of being snubbed by the Oscars almost entirely. And it's not even his voice. They play Kyle MacLachlan's voice, even though there were plenty of David Lynch ones they could have chose when they were doing all those voice caps.
Real missed opportunity to have a Gordon Cole line played very loud at the Academy Awards.
Oh man, I would have loved that.
What about you, Caleb? What did you think of the ceremony as a whole?
It was, I think, one of the more enjoyable Oscar broadcasts in recent years, and I think that's a very low bar in general for quality television out of these. I like Conan to begin with. I thought he was in mostly classic form, and if anything, kind of underused, which is a welcome change from some of the other recent comedy hosts who just have a tendency to dominate, devour, and make miserable the ceremony. Certain people, multiple people with the first name of Jimmy, for instance. I was watching on the TV broadcast from ABC, so I did not suffer from all the Hulu constant blackouts and glitches and problems that many other people in the chat were having that have generated multiple news articles about how unprepared Disney seems to have been for hosting the Oscars on streaming. I'll be the minority voice on the songs. I was disappointed not to have the performances of the original songs because that is something I often look forward to.
Oh, okay.
But I was especially annoyed that we did a 10-minute James Bond advertisement for no apparent reason other than Amazon's acquisition, whatever the current state of the deal is, them getting that from the Broccoli's. So all the James Bond, and I like the Bond songs a lot, but I've heard them 1,000 times and in better performances in a lot of the cases, and then the Wiz songs. It all felt like it was taking away from other parts of the show, though at least they didn't play many people off. So I was prepared to be much angry about that if they played a lot of people off after spending so much time on advertising for movie franchises that need no advertisement.
For sure.
And I never liked the In Memoriam. I think the In Memoriam is always a tacky, kind of tasteless, clicky favorites fest every year. And the way they give more or less time to different people on their order of importance has always felt kind of gross to me. And then ending with, here's our QR code for all the people we didn't mention, like, Michelle Trachtenberg the other day, and everyone else, just never works for me. But the choice to play Mozart's Requiem was so over the top, and I know that's like a very traditional Requiem song, but for the tone of the Oscars, to me, it's maybe nice not to have a tacky pop song, but there's something so overwhelmingly campy about that choice to do the Requiem there. I did not know how to feel about that at all. But
I get that, although I will also say that doing what you think is in good taste, but it is actually in terrible taste, is what the Oscars are for.
So true.
Yeah. So, classic Oscar moment in that sense.
And I would split the difference. I'd say I grew up watching Oscar ceremonies in the 90s. So if I am not seeing like Dime Store Twyla Tharp interpretive ballet to the song nominees, I do feel a little robbed. That being said, I'm on record all over the place saying I think that having the best song category in the 2020s is just stupid and insane. So like, I don't want them to take up any more of the show than they do, even though
fair.
Obviously, like, if I'm going to get the utterly non-existent song that I guess probably played over the end credits of Sing Sing, I don't know where else in that film it would have been.
Yeah.
I mean, better that than hearing the apparently singer Ray, who I have never heard of, nor had anyone in the room with me ever heard of her, auditioning to sing James Bond theme songs. So it's I do think it's a misallocation of the time they have, for sure. And I do think if you're gonna insist on giving awards to songs after the musical has been a dead genre for 40 years, you should play those songs in the show just to like let us know what the hell's going on.
It's probably true. I just tend to not like them. I don't
Well, they
know.
tend to be bad.
Yes. I mean, yeah, why are we awarding things that are bad?
They could have at least split the
The
difference
Oscars.
with the 5 to 10 second clips we get of the songs, not having somebody talk over those tiny clips so you could actually hear, like, remember the little bit of what the song was. At the very least, I think we can do 10 seconds from each
That's a
And I,
uninterrupted.
good point.
yeah. And I do think you've got to. I think one of the big questions to me about this entire Oscar telecast, how much of it was built around the producers trying to disguise the fact that Emilia Perez was the nomination leader.
Yeah.
And assuredly would have won Best Picture if its lead star had not been intemperate on Twitter.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Like, I think that's part of it. Like, if we acknowledge Best Song too much, we have to deal with two performances of Emilia Perez songs, and nobody wants that. I guess. I don't know. I don't know what the logic is. But no, I otherwise, I think I agree with the sort of emerging consensus. It was a nice show. It was a watchable show. It was not a show that felt slow to me, even though it was the customary, 3 hours and 30-minute long Oscar telecast. It felt really safe. And
Yeah.
I think that was like clearly a choice that had been made. And there were even some jokes about how that was a choice that had been made.
Mhm.
It was a generic Oscars on purpose as a sort of, I think, very deliberate way to make it not feel like it was trying to be anything in particular. And I think, I like Conan O'Brien a lot, so this is not an insult, even though it sounds like one. I think he's a good choice for hosting when you want someone who's not really going to try to put too much personality of his own into the show. I was like, when Conan did silly bits, I did not bristle at them as hard as I bristle when Jimmy Kimmel does Jimmy Kimmel bits.
Oh no, not even close.
Yeah.
There's a pleasant, a pleasant zaniness to Conan that nevertheless never, like, really threatens the ceremony, like you're
Right.
saying.
Yeah.
Absolutely. No, I mean, we have not had a late night talk show host since he quit anywhere remotely as appealing as he is. So, like,
Agreed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I will say, I think that they handled the whole we are the center of the entertainment industry and half the town just burned down thing well without being heavy-handed about it.
I would agree.
Yeah.
I would agree. I think having the firefighters come out to tell hacky jokes was exactly the right way to
Yeah.
deal with that.
Yeah. They were great. Kudos,
Yeah,
firefighters.
my friend who used to work in development in the industry and then came here to be a grad student, the thing he commented on during that bit was you could only ever do this in LA because in LA the firefighters are camera ready. And that's not going to be true of any other fire department. It's like that makes a lot of sense.
True.
But any particular standout moments, good or bad, from the ceremony that anyone sort of wants to call out?
We're not getting to speeches yet, correct?
I think speeches are their own category.
Yeah,
I think that's
so.
fair. But I think we're all going to call out the same one, potentially.
Potentially.
Or the same two. I thought there were many delightful introductions in this one. June Squibb was just so much fun in her
So
little
good.
bit. And everybody, or not everybody, but most of the introductions, they remembered their lines, they knew their bit. They were good little, mostly tasteful, cute, funny, or meaningful openings. I like that they continue doing some prior winner of this category presents each person along the line. Some of those are more successful than others, but I forget if that was last year or the year before they introduced that, and I thought that was one of the better innovations of the Oscars in a while.
Yeah.
Even just like having all the costume concepts up behind each of the concept artists as they were going through is a nice touch. That little presentational things like that.
Yeah, doing the costumes that way, I always like it when they show on-screen text from the screenplay during the announcement of the screenplay nominees. So when that came up, I was a very happy camper.
I really appreciated the Ben Stiller presenting the production design Oscar bit where it was just a good visual gag where he was supposed to rise through the floor if you didn't happen to watch the ceremony and got stuck halfway up.
Oh, that was a good bit. And speaking of visual gags, I mean, Conan O'Brien's introduction on this one, doing the substance bit, kind of obvious in some ways, but I was still laughing aloud at that and a bunch of the others throughout.
It did get a very urgent text from my mother asking me what the hell the substance was about. So,
I realized today, being on social media, that I know the guy who shot that opening bit with Conan, which was really cool. It's
well,
like,
that's very cool.
hey, other people I went to school with are more successful than me.
Yeah,
Yay. Good for him.
I would like, since I am of course the voice of doom and hate on this podcast, I would like to share what I thought was the one exception, because I would agree in general. I think the presenters were pretty much on point. Some of the pairings were like, I have no idea what this pairing's about, but okay, cool. But I do think I would like to make note of the fact that Goldie Hawn was apparently so goddamn high that Andrew Garfield had to hold her up.
Yes.
And good for him. I wouldn't be able to do that for that long. You could see his arm was straining.
He was coming across very sweet in doing it in his presentation. A very, very charming night from Andrew Garfield all around.
Yeah.
And not a bad suit, but we'll get to that later.
Oh, yeah.
For sure.
Yeah.
Should we talk speeches?
Sure,
yeah. Should we begin or end with Adrian Brody? Which, I don't know if you guys saw this, set the record.
For the longest?
It did.
It beat Greer Garson's Mrs. Miniver's speech by 10 seconds. Now, to be fair, if he hadn't spent such a large portion of that time of that speech saying, the speech isn't going to go too long, I promise, please stop playing me off, he wouldn't have set the record, but he would have been in the neighborhood. So
I thought he was doing well before that, before the playing off started. It was a bit meandering, but it was heartfelt, and the parts that seemed a little ad-libbed were kind of affecting. I liked it up until that point, and then things took a sharp nosedive.
Fully agree. I was really liking the speech. I was actually kind of sad they were playing him off, because it's like, we have 3 more awards. Why are you doing this? But then post that, he just seemed to have completely lost what he was doing and just was trying to find it and couldn't. And it was humiliating for that second half of that speech, I thought.
Yeah. I feel like Adrian Brody reels me in to thinking he's this like bashful good dude. And then every time he gives an awards speech, I realize he's really full of himself, which sucks because I think he's a great actor.
Well, I mean, actors are narcissists.
Yes,
what I kind of believe.
Yeah, tremendous actor. I mean, he was. If I were picking among them, he would still have been my pick for best actor. I think out of the nominees this year.
Out of the nominees, definitely.
Yeah, out of the nominees, and it did feel like the entire second half felt unplanned to me, and like he was. Yes, he was getting angry or annoyed that he was getting played off and searching for, I can't say with any confidence, but it felt like he was trying to ad-lib a response to the No Other Land speech in some way that just completely, dive bombed along with the rest of whatever he was trying to say. And then it just was so vague at the end that it wasn't even really 100% clear what he was saying about
I
that.
think he had some sense it was going to be an anti-Trump speech without naming Trump, but by the time he got to that part of it, he was so rattled and tired that he was not getting to it.
One of my personal favorites was Paul Tazewell for costume design. Because he stood up there and just said, I'm the first African American, I might have said black, might have said African American, I'm not sure, man, to win the costume design award. And just put it out there and was super proud of himself. And like, it's nice to see people proud of themselves and not trying to pass it off like, oh, I'm so lucky. How did this possibly happen? Like he owned it, and that was nice. I don't know who he is. I've since looked him up. He's done a lot of TV and a lot of theater and not as much film, but yeah, now I know who he is.
Yeah, and no, I thought his speech was solid. I think my favorite of the night, unfortunately, was the first one of the night. I really did like Kieran Culkin, because it was the exact right amount of, I'm an actor, so they're not going to play me off, so I get to spill a little bit more personal nonsense, but done in a way that felt very charming to me.
Yes, yeah.
I thought the acting speeches did not hit other than his, but I thought his hit really, really well.
And his it just felt very personal, like in a goofy, charming, yeah, and
And I
sometimes slightly awkward, but in a good way kind of way.
Slightly awkward for
Yeah.
sure.
and I liked that he was telling a story rather than just thanking a list, and that the story
Yeah.
was germane to the moment. It felt very pleasant to me, and
Yeah.
set a standard that I think the night did not meet again speech wise. But no, I liked
Yeah.
him.
The other one
Yeah.
that bothered me, and I don't love that it bothered me because I think it started out well, but was it documentary short, live action short that one of the shorts. They
I
came
couldn't
up and they
tell
were
you.
reading off of the cell phone.
Oh, was that in
Oh,
the
that
shadow
was
of the
really
cypress?
Yes, in the
bad. That was
shadow
in
of the
Shadow of the
cypress.
Cypress,
Thank
the
you.
Oh,
animated
And
short.
but
when
That's a
yeah,
he
language
like
barrier, but also,
uh-huh.
my God.
it was a language barrier, but this woman read the speech, and then the guy took the phone from her and said, "No, no, no, let me do it," and read the same
Reread the
speech.
speech.
Like, go to hell, dude. She was struggling
Oh, is
along
that
just
what happened?
fine.
Oh,
Yeah.
I totally thought it was like she was trying to hand it to him because they were both struggling with the language and they kept passing it back and forth, trying to get the other to read
The
something. But I might have misread the
I
moment.
th the impression I got was that they had set up this speech
Uh huh.
where they were each going to read little bits of it.
Yes.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
what happened is she read too much of it and then he took it and just reread the same thing. It just came off as
Mm-mm.
overbearing and
It was,
yeah.
yeah, it was awful. It was
Yeah.
confounding. I have no idea. Plus, it
The
didn't help
start
that
of it.
I did not like that film, so I was not rooting for them
Uh,
to like succeed in their speech.
I haven't seen it.
So
Yeah.
I thought animated short was quite bad this year. Like the
mm.
category, I thought was unusually weak. Um,
I did like the beginning of that. That was another speech that I thought started out well, and the two of them were just so so excited and
Yeah,
surprised. It seemed
flustered.
yeah.
Yeah.
to be there.
No,
But
it's always cute when people are flustered, but yeah,
mm,
that one just turned into something
yeah.
bleak.
Yeah. Bleak is a good word for it. Yeah. Yeah.
And like even the Brody speech, even though it needed to be like 3 minutes shorter, it wasn't bleak. It was just an actor not filtering. And I do feel a little robbed of Demi Moore winning because we surely would have gotten another like 5 minute speech, and
Hmm.
we could have had like an entire like 15-minute Oscar speechathon at the end
Yeah.
of the show, and that would have been fun. But
Yeah. Yeah. And because she was great on the red carpet interview earlier and in other places on it. Would have been fun to have. I think my favorite was also either the Kieran Culkin one or the No Other Land crew, who they were doing the classic like message urgency speech, and I think doing it
Mhm.
very 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 well, very urgently from the heart. And
yeah,
Zoe,
and
oh sorry.
I know I was going to say I like that they took the time to sort of repeat the structure of their film in their speech, which I know the
Hmm.
film was kind of hard to lay hands on, so people haven't seen it. But
Yeah.
it is like a collective filmmaking project, and so they gave a collective Oscar speech, which I thought was very cool.
Definitely. Um, and I think Zoe Saldana gave like maybe the most traditional Oscar speech, but a very good one. And the classic thanking of everyone who got here in life, and another call out of I believe her, was she the first person or first woman of Dominican descent?
I think she said
To
first
I
person.
think she said
first
first
person.
person. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, and having that bit, but she was just doing the whole classic thing very very well, and it felt from the heart, and it did it did feel notable, as
Yeah.
people also mentioned in chat, doing the shout out to the cast, but not necessarily to
Yeah.
any particular castmate among
Yeah.
the many names actually named directly, because that was one of the biggest. Elephants in the room throughout the night, like you said, the Amelia Perez situation and fall from grace amidst
Yeah.
the Oscars.
Yeah.
And then the last one that I would like to call out, Sean Baker, he was a little unimpressive to me in his speeches. However,
Hmm.
I don't really watch other award shows, so I hadn't seen him except other things. But the movie theater, the plea for people to go back to movie theaters that he used an entire speech on.
Whew.
It was cheesy,
Uh-huh.
but I also loved it because, that is the bread and butter of the movie industry. And
I I liked about his arc of speeches, you could tell he had 3 ready. You could tell he had screenplay, then director, then picture ready. When he won editing, you could almost watch him in real time cut it in half, because at that point, he knew, like we all knew, that he was going up 4 times. Yeah. Because editing was the one that would not have happened. So I do like that there was kind of a theme. Like, one of them is the talk about my career and thanking people. One of them is the talking about the films, but then he uses directing to talk about the medium. I did like the directing speech. I thought his other 3 speeches were very just fine. Blah. Very blah. But I thought it was sweet, even though I think the world would be a better place if Sean Baker hadn't been born. But that's my baggage.
Wow.
Harsh.
I really fucking disliked Anora is the thing. But that's not where we are in the show, in the episode quite yet.
Where are we then?
I think should we talk dresses or tuxes, sure, if we want to talk tuxes. This was actually, I think, a very unusually adventuresome tux evening for the Oscars, but dressed, best and worst dressed, shall we say.
I think my immediate worst, and it's not the most outrageously worst of them, but just the most conventionally bad for me, was Timothée Chalamet's human stick of butter or banana cream thing he had going on with a fairly wrinkled tux ensemble, no tie or bow tie, I don't think, no belt, even though there's belt loops on the thing, and then just the black tip shoes at the bottom to complete the banana look, I guess, was although he also has the with his hair on the other end working for that effect. I think that was just the overall too simultaneously not enough effort and too much effort from just wearing a tux.
The room I was in, I was with my friend and his fiance, and she is, what is the name for Timothée Chalamet's fandom? Like, do they have a cute name for themselves?
They must.
Like,
gosh, they must.
Shala Maniacs or something.
Shala Maniacs, I like that.
Apparently, yeah.
Is that what it is?
That, according to Google, Maniacs. Yeah.
All right, well, great. I have my finger on the pulse of the Zoomers. She found the butter suit to be by far the boldest and most exciting costume choice of the night. And
it was the boldest. I will. It was
bold as all hell. I think my pick for worst, I don't know that I have a specific candidate. I think in general, the contrasting tone bodices that were just all over the place, I don't think a single one of them worked. If pressed, I might say that I thought Mikey Madison's worked the least. She was in like a sort of cotton candy pink with a big black stripe, and hers was kind of even worse because the hemline was wrong, and like it was like dragging on the ground as she walked. But no, just in general, like a lot of bodice malfunctions. Not malfunctions, but just like bunchy and too high and weird contrasting colors. And I thought that was a kind of ongoing slow motion car wreck that was happening.
One of those that I agree was terrible was Zoe Saldana's like red velvety thing on the bottom and then sparkly silver top. Like
and Zoe Saldana's was particularly bad because it was obviously not the right size for her bust.
Yeah, and it just, the bottom just, this is a weird way to put it. It looked like the way a jellyfish moves. Like, it was just all bunchy.
It's somewhere between a jellyfish and I'm forgetting which household implement from Beauty and the Beast, like one of the animate household objects.
Like the feather duster.
The footstool.
Something close to that.
Yeah, it was
fabric-y, yeah.
Yeah, it was bad. So that was one of mine. And then I said this before we started recording. I'm not a fan of Felicity Jones in particular. But I thought that her dress was ugly. It was this silver cutout thing with bows, big bow in the front. And to me, it just kind of looked like her dress was trying to be similar to the architecture in The Brutalist. It wasn't made of cement, and that's all I will give her. I didn't like it at all.
This doesn't count because it was not part of the show, but I think another one of my picks, and you reminded me of it when you were talking about sort of the architectural qualities. The advertisements during the show
Oh.
The one that at least on my feed played twice, it was Haley Steinfeld doing an advertisement for breast cancer awareness, as far as I could tell,
Oh.
which seems like a strange thing to do an advertisement for, because I think at this point breast cancer is fully, we're aware of it, but it's the Oscars, whatever. But she was wearing this weird like swoopy black thing that like was kind of like a shield in front of her neck and then a shield across her midriff and then like a kind of like backwards L or eyebrow shaped cutout that like revealed her cleavage in a
I
really
missed
weird
this.
way.
Huh.
It was very complicated and felt like specifically insulting in an advertisement about breast cancer, because like it feels like the only thing that keeps the dress functioning is that breasts are like, it is resting on breasts basically. And it's like, this is insane to me. So yeah, that was probably the least attractive thing I saw during the Oscars, but at the ceremony itself, I don't know if I had a
Oh,
specific least favorite. It's
I'm
weird,
looking at
right?
this now. Yeah. That it, you know what it looks like? It looks like it's made out of, you two may not be aware of this. There are these like stick-on bra things that you can use if you're wearing a strapless dress. It looks like the whole dress is a stick-on bra,
Hmm.
Huh.
and it's
Interesting.
not good.
I mean, that's a choice. That is
Sure
definitely a
is.
choice that can be made.
Yeah. Yeah.
Uh,
Ooh.
what about best dressed?
There were quite a few I liked. There was not one that just blew me away, but I thought a lot of gowns, especially, and a couple of tuxes that I was into. I really liked Lalisa Manobel's tuxedo gown that she was wearing. It had sort of the exterior black tuxedo tassels going down to dress length, and then the white shirt becoming blouse becoming dress down beneath that. And then on top of the black pants, so it had kind of like that 3-layered thing going. It's like it simultaneously feels like it's got a nice traditional bent going, but also I thought just had a nice flow to it. So that was one of my favorites. I liked June Squibbs again. I think
Yeah.
she had those lovely bright flower patterns going on. It's not the super shapely gown or anything, but just very lovely designs. I thought very fun to look at, all the various colors on there and the
hmm
purples and crimson bits there. And I think Coleman Domingo among the tuxes was probably that, or that he had like the red Valentino jacket, almost like a dinner robe, and then the tasseled cummerband going down around the center. That I think among the men was probably my favorite.
Okay. I for the men, I did like Andrew Garfield's like kind of copper brown tux. I guess it was a
Mm-hmm.
tux.
I don't think
Um,
that's the first time he's worn that color at the Oscars, though.
Mm.
I
Interesting.
recognize that color with his face. Maybe it was deja vu.
Oh, so he's a one-trick pony, perhaps.
It's a good
That's
color
fine.
for him.
It is a good
No, I'm
color
not.
on
I mean,
him.
again, and if you're a guy and you find the look that works, you stick with it. I get that, but
Yeah.
also, I don't know. It's the Oscars. Wear
I
butter, for God's sake. Do something big.
make a statement. I liked there were a few like beaded gowns. Demi Moore and Selena Gomez both had these
Mm-hmm.
like fairly neutral colored but beaded gowns that were great. Fernanda Torres, I thought, wore a very tasteful, it was like kind of black beaded. I think it was a Chanel gown. I looked it up at one point. Black beaded top that, goes all the way down, long sleeves, has kind of a flared skirt over another skirt.
Mm.
It was interesting and sexy and didn't look like an old lady dress. And
Mm-hmm.
she was kind of being in my brain compared to Isabella Rossellini, who wore this just like blue velvet sofa material. Like that just, it looked all
You know,
drapey
I
and not great on
I
her.
am
So
I am not going to tell Isabella Rossellini of all people what to do, but it was very
far be it for me to give Isabella Rossellini any fashion tips. I don't like the thing for older women where they are expected to wear drapey, shapeless clothing.
Hmm.
And that's
Mm-hmm.
what I'm getting at, rather than
Yeah,
Isabella Rossellini made a terrible choice.
sure,
So I
sure,
appreciated about Fernanda Torres that,
fair,
she showed off her bod without showing off her bod was good.
sure.
Yeah.
Halle
I
Berry's was beautiful too among those more shapely gowns. She had the mirror shards thing
Oh,
going
yeah.
on.
Yeah, Halle Berry was my favorite.
Oh,
Yeah.
sorry.
That was actually that was my favorite kind of. No, no, I'm glad to hear someone else liked it. I loved again very big and bold, but in a way that was like somehow not. Again, the standard for bold was: are you dressed like butter or are you just like a
Yeah.
person? And I think it was very good lines. I really loved when you saw it in close up. These silver mirror shards were like a mosaic, but it wasn't a
Mhm.
regular mosaic. Like you could
Hmm.
very clearly tell that it had been like hand shaped to have an interesting, just sort of like shattered mirror pattern. I thought it looked really, really great, and looked very. It was attention grabbing without having to like, in a weird way. It wasn't like a gimmick to get there.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I guess. And then my other not best dressed necessarily, but when you mentioned Lisa Manoble in the Bond sequence, it reminded me. I do appreciate that Doja Cat chose to dress as a Bond opening credit sequence. I think that was big and weird.
It was big and weird. I mean,
It appeared that she was wearing like several lavaliers made of diamonds and nothing structural underneath them. And good for her.
she looked great. I liked it.
No, it was cool. It was fun. It was very appropriate for the
Yeah.
function she was performing at
Yes.
the Oscars.
Absolutely.
Yes.
And
Is
I'll
it-
also say, if Doja Cat was using that moment to audition to sing a Bond theme, I was sold. I would like her to sing a Bond theme based on
Yeah.
that performance.
Is it too early to get into what we think of the Wicked duo in their full costume mode slash
No, I think
theming event for
that's a
the
good
whole
place
show
to
there?
be.
Because
good
of their
seg.
costumes, certainly their gowns certainly are a part of that. Although I keep saying costumes because that's what they felt more like.
Well, I feel like at this point, Ariana Grande's existence feels like an act of costuming to support the movie Wicked, and I am eager for Wicked 2 to come out so she can stop doing it.
I kind of appreciate how much they're leaning in. I feel like those two like each other a lot.
Oh,
I think they do.
clearly,
I
clearly.
think they
Yeah.
do.
And I think it's kind of nice to see that they're very into this movie that they made. I don't know.
Uh-huh.
I sound like my mom. My mom, hi mom. She, I swear, like 7 or 8 times during the Oscars would listen to a speech and say, "Oh, how nice." I sound like her, but
Yeah.
I did like it. I think it's kitschy and cute.
I get all of that. I feel like Ariana Grande's stylist or someone needs to tell the movie producers we are done bleaching her eyebrows
Oh,
because she
yeah.
looks like a corpse, and she
Yeah.
has looked like a corpse since like May of this of last year.
Yeah, that's where I'm like, I think I would be with you, Cameron, if we hadn't had this past almost a year of press
Yeah.
junket for Wicked to the point we were just so saturated with not just the two of them, but everybody involved, the extreme energy and, theater kid thing that they have going on, and what a bonding. And there's that famous interview where circle of folks talking about the movie and breaking down in tears and barely able to get through on the transformative experience. And that was probably, I forget how many months before the film. So I think I'm just getting so
I think that was
burned.
happening in like September is sort of the peak of
Yeah.
like when people were actively writing like, is Ariana Grande going to survive this press tour articles? I think was like
That was-
September.
Yeah. So that was I think if it weren't for all that's the camp I would be at. Oh, this was a fun way to do, the movie and occupy that. I'm just, it's going to be a long few years if they're
It's
still
going to
doing
be because
this.
there's not going to be another Now the
part
good news
two.
though,
Yeah.
the good news for everyone involved is that obviously Wicked 2 is not going to have the same sort of awards traction, so hopefully they'll be done once it premieres.
Okay, so this was a question I actually wanted to ask you guys is do you think that those obviously we haven't seen Wicked 2, we don't know. Do you think those two will still get nominations next year? Given that what I've been told is the second half of Wicked is not as great as the first half.
No,
No.
basically, Popular is the big Glinda song, and Defying Gravity is the big Elphaba song, and
Yeah.
they're done, and
And what
that's
is left?
They've
Like
got
what
I
is
no
don't
no
left.
good deed. No good deed is the
clearly
one big showstopper still, but
clearly I don't know the show very well. Like so okay. Um I
No, it's
will be
like
interested to watch.
the comparison I made last night at the Oscar party. It's exactly what happened with It and It 2,
mhm.
which is that from the moment they announced these were going to be two movies, I feel it was obvious that the second one was going to fall off hard because everyone already knows that the best material was going to be in part one.
Yeah.
And like that's been clear forever because the best part is always in the first act of Wicked. It has been since 2003.
Yeah. So this is
So
not a Lord of the Rings situation where they're holding off giving the best picture until the third one.
no,
Like, okay,
no.
great.
This isn't even a Dune situation where it's still going to get like a handful of courtesy nods. Like I think Wicked 2 is maybe going to get like again costumes probably sets again and maybe the song, but that'll be like the farthest it goes into the award season, I suspect.
Yeah.
That opening it started with Over the Rainbow, right? Cynthia
Yes.
Erivo doing that. Speaking of the telecast, like very very compelling work with the holograms or whatever they were doing for the lighting effects in that one, and the rainbow
Hmm.
manifesting over the set as they slowly revealed the big circle that they were using, the multi-level screen and orchestra view and all that. Good production on that number, and a good if they're gonna dedicate the show to the Wizard of Oz, obviously that's the one you're going to open with.
For sure. And I mean, I liked the production of it. I always get slightly peeved when the Oscars seem to decide they're going to theme themselves after one of the nominees,
Yeah.
especially if it is a nominee that is obviously not going to win anything real.
Yeah.
And it's because Wicked was the show. Like, it was the big movie that was nominated. And I'm curious. I don't think ratings have come out for this ceremony yet, but I'd be curious to see how it did, because I know that the Oscars bottomed out real hard in the pandemic year.
Yeah.
But even though they're recovering from that, they still haven't recovered or even close to it. And I'm curious how this one did, because it feels like, other than Wicked, this ceremony was all about a bunch of movies that people didn't see.
If my work pool, Oscar pool, is any indication, only 5 people entered, and one of them was me. So,
All right.
yeah.
Just posted in the last hour on Variety that they hit 18.1 million viewers, down 7% from last year.
Okay. So still nowhere close to the catastrophe that was the Coda year. I think it was the Coda year.
Well, the year of it was what's the one with Frances McDormand?
Oh,
Nomadland. That was
Nomadland,
the
yeah.
year where they had like 10 million viewers.
Yeah.
That was the year, the Nomadland year.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't think the Coda year was a whole lot better, but
No. It had been steadily improving, I think, every year since Coda, although this year dropping off from last year tracks, given that last year was Barbie.
well, and I personally know many people who watched last year's ceremony just to see Ryan Gosling perform that song. So, speaking of songs,
So, I mean, and yeah, when you have a song from the diegesis of the movie, perform it at the Oscars. I think that is
Yeah.
appropriate and good, and that is
Yeah.
what that category is for.
agreed.
Should we talk a little bit about the movies themselves? So I guess I'd want to start by making the dark confession, which is I didn't publicly make my predictions available before the ceremony this year, and I'm glad I didn't, because I had the worst year I've had since 2011 predicting awards. I went 14 of 23, including two just absolute dumbass, why did I do this? I decided to be clever and say that Conclave was going to win score, even though there was no earthly reason to assume it would be anything other than The Brutalist. So I missed that, and then I put Wicked for sound. And those are the two that are like, if all I had done was not those two, I would at least feel okay about my prediction records. But I fucked up.
I mean, I did decently. I got 17 right, which tied at my 5-person work office pool. Um I made a stupid mistake on original score as well. I was told without having seen the movie that the score for The Wild Robot is great. So I guessed The Wild Robot. I don't know why, but I did. Um, and what was my other stupid mistake? I had another. I don't know what. Oh, film editing. I went with Amelia Perez for film editing because despite the extreme backlash, I kind of expected them to throw them a bone that was not Zoe Saldana, and they
Hmm.
didn't. So,
Well, it got song, but I
oh
mean,
yes,
I don't know that editing was a gimme anyways, because I think Anora was not the consensus pick. So
yeah.
I don't think that's one that you should feel like was dumb.
Editing is one of a few of the technical categories that I feel like the most of that talent, most cinematography, most editing, the biggest, flashiest, whatever it is what always wins. And I
Editing,
went with that in
sure.
mind, and it did not play out for a couple of categories this year, which,
Yeah, editing goes one of two ways. It either goes what has the biggest, most conspicuous editing, by which they generally mean what has the most visible story structure, or it means we just want to give Best Picture several things because we don't really want to think about this. And that's clearly what they did this year.
yeah, it is not as cut and dry with editing as it is with, say, cinematography, where just the flashiest is
Yeah,
usually what wins.
and you got your shot on film Vistavision
Exactly.
in the year of our
Literally
Lord 2025.
the
Literally the
most
most,
negative
the
space.
the actual physically most
Yes.
cinematography for sure.
Yeah. So, but I did okay. I'm not usually great. I vote too often with my heart on these. So,
I realized I'm starting to fall into a sort of negative version of that,
Hmm.
where I assume that the thing I want to win won't because they're the
yeah.
Oscars. So I, and not that that was really activated this year, but there's a couple categories I think I would have gotten if I'd been like, well, my favorite score is The Brutalist, so I just will go with The Brutalist. But it was like, no, but the people who have bad taste don't like the score for the Conclave best, so I'll go with Conclave, and then I was
Yeah.
wrong.
I did the opposite of that this one in deciding to be very. I got caught up in the enthusiasm of them nominating so many movies that I thought were actually very good, deserving contenders in various categories, and especially Best Picture. It's been a few years where they keep nominating things that I'd never thought had any chance of getting near Oscar attention,
Mm-hmm.
and I think are actually tremendously good films. Like The Brutalist and which The Brutalist wound up being my nominee partly because of that, but aspirationally because it felt like something that very easily could be to the Oscars' tastes and take Best Picture, while also being bold and interesting and just strikingly shot, incredible music and sound design, really great performances. So things like that, but even the fact that The Substance got nominated got me so excited. I just a few years ago would not have thought the Oscars would ever pay attention to something like The Substance at this
Mm-hmm.
level. Maybe wrongly, but there's been quite a few of those lately where something so over the top and gross and fun and funny and bold and weird is getting a lot of their attention. So I got swept up in that, and a lot of my picks were aspirational or things that I thought
Did you have
should.
a substance sweep?
No, I did not call a substance sweep. I did think that Demi Moore was a lock
Oh, I think
on.
most of
So
us
did
did.
I. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think let's see, what my closest I got to substance sweep was thinking Coralie Farja would be the best director, and I don't think I put them in for anything else here from the look of it. I was taken aback by the Anora sweep, but apparently I would not have been if I had consulted the betting markets like within a few days of
Hmm.
the Oscars themselves. I guess that was actually the favored win in most of what it took, which surprised me. It's like I know you despised it, Tim, and you don't like Sean Baker's stuff in general.
I do not.
I do like his work in general, and I had a very good time at Anora. I thought it was hilarious. My theater was really energized, and we were all laughing a lot, and I really appreciated a lot of the big performances in that. And I still don't think it was close to both to me did not feel like a conventional Oscar win pick, and felt like it was maybe riding off of Sean Baker's previous films in that sense. And also just for me personally, it's not in my top 10 movies of the year, even though I really enjoyed it. So it was
It's
not on my
It's
you
a
know.
weird winner, and I don't think it's going to quote unquote age poorly because I feel Sean Baker's got juice, and like people who are fans of him are going to continue being fans. Young people are going to become fans in film school and whatnot. So like people will still watch and like the film. It's always going to look weird that it won Best Picture, I think, because it is such a not the kind of movie that wins Best Picture in a way that even though objectively I think The Brutalist is a much stranger thing to have been made and released. Like 3.5 hour movie about the fallout of the Holocaust. That feels like an Oscar win, right? Like that's the sort of thing that you sort of mentally expect the Oscars
on paper,
to go to. Yeah. So like I do think it's going to be an odd looking winner, but I think we've had a lot of those recently. I'm almost tempted to say the least odd winner we've had since like Parasite probably is Oppenheimer.
Yeah.
And yeah, other than that, we've had some curveballs lately, and I like that about it. The movie's just not for me. Is the thing. Like it is clear that Sean Baker finds a certain kind of thing funny and I don't, and that makes it very hard to engage with his anything because his films are all comedies and I just don't find them funny, and that's the big problem I have with it. But yeah, so besides our sort of collective not doing great with with predictions, what were the wins that made you happiest above and beyond like the speech was good, but like what were you just happy that is now an Oscar winning X?
I mean, I was happy that The Brutalist won for cinematography. There have been so many years that I've just been, I feel like my soul has been crushed by the cinematography winner, Avatar. And so that did make me happy. And the return to shooting on film, as, you know, marginal as it may be, that was good. Nothing else jumped out at me as, oh, thank God that won. I'm so excited. So, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I would kind of go off something you said, Caleb, where like the fact that a movie as gross and ooey gooey as The Substance got this close to anything is cool and weird. So even though I don't think it was at all a surprise that The Substance won Best Makeup, I was really happy that it did, because like this is what I want makeup to be, basically, and that it is routinely just we made someone look 10 years older than they are. Give us an Oscar.
Yes.
And this was actually like
on them.
this is like Demi Moore now has like 6 heads and no legs, and like that's to me what the makeup artist's art should be about. So that win did make me pretty happy. I'd say both cinematography and score for The Brutalist. I liked the movie a lot. I think it has obviously some flaws, but it is a big gesture, and I think it getting not like acknowledged for the bigness of it. And cinematography is pretty huge in that movie, of course, but also the score. It's not a tuneful score. It's kind of very abrasive and jarring. So like being willing to give that kind of music the score, not a score Oscar, is to me a nice unexpected treat.
Yeah, those are that pretty much covers the ones that I guess my biggest surprise was what I already said, the breadth of the nominees and the change there. But yeah, Brutalist taking score and cinematography and incredibly well deserved, I thought. The Substance, ironically, was one where I actually did not go with what I thought should win, which was The Substance or Nosferatu for makeup and hairstyling. I thought for sure they were going to hand makeup and hairstyling to Wicked as one of its consolation prizes, because that's one of the most talked about features of it. But I'm very glad to see that it went to the practical effects, the creature design.
Yeah.
I was sad that Nosferatu got shut out in so many categories where it could have been a dark horse contender for something, but the very fact that it was here and that The Substance was getting so much attention, like horror has rarely had a better time at a mainstream award ceremony, I think, than this. So that was a very fun thing.
And, I want to say on the subject of throwing Wicked some consolation prizes, I think, Cameron, you and I should be very, very happy that the cinematography branch had the wisdom not to nominate Wicked for Best Cinematography, which I was surprised. I expected it to be. I was like, anything this horrible to look at will surely get an Oscar nomination. I think it would have won if it had been nominated. So we should be very grateful it wasn't.
So you may be right. They should almost institute like a category that is like it's sort of best green screen cinematography. Like that. I get that that's visual effects, but it's also kind of not. Like
you're making choices about where to set the light. It's just the light doesn't exist, but it's still a choice.
But that, I mean, that was my beef with Avatar when Avatar won Best Cinematography is there was no functional set here. Like, how is that? How did you do
Mhm.
anything? Obviously they did many things. So,
No,
but
I mean,
yeah, I
as
was,
someone whose dissertation research started with, "Isn't it cool how they make cinematography happen in computers?" I have to defend it a little bit, but I'm not
eh,
gonna. I know of all people, you're not the one who's gonna want to hear that
no, I'm
defense.
not.
So,
You and I can have that fight later. Yeah. I let's see. It was Dune 2 that won Best Visual Effects. I was also
yeah,
happy that Dune 2, it got the
it's
things I expected it to get. But it was actually one of my favorite movies of the year
Mm.
because I enjoy spending time in a big weird world like that.
yeah, it was my
Um,
third favorite of the nominees
yeah.
for picture.
Mm. I do think it was of all the movies that are just full of big expensive CGI everywhere, that looks by far the most convincing, I
Hmm.
think,
Hmm.
out of
Yeah.
everything it was contending against.
Yeah,
And good sound. I don't think the best sound films were nominated for achievement sound, but Dune probably of those is a pretty good pick.
Dune would have been
Uh,
my pick. Actually, that's part of the reason I went with Wicked. Again, it's like, well, I want Dune to win sound, so it won't, and it did. So good. I'm
yeah.
glad because I was actually having this conversation last night as well. Dune really got fucked because like at the start of the year, it was like Dune 2 has saved cinema,
Uh-huh.
and
Yeah.
we got to this point in the year, and it's like, who cares that Dune saved cinema? We have Amelia Perez to give lots of awards to, and then that blew up in their face. But I would have been entirely fine with Dune having a Return of the King style. We wrapped up the series. Let's just give it absolutely every conceivable award
Uh-huh.
style night. And clearly that was never going to happen. But a little bummed out that Denis Villeneuve somehow managed twice to not get nominated for Best Director for that
Yeah.
series.
Odd.
He'll have another chance, it sounds like.
Well,
Last news I
Dune
heard.
Messiah is not going to get Oscar attention because it involves weird ass shit. So
Yes. I want to see what he does as it gets, unstoppably strange
yeah,
with each entry.
yeah. Yeah. Any other thoughts about the awards, the ceremony, the films that you wish had been here and weren't?
I really, I don't know what I would have wanted it to be nominated for. Maybe cinematography, but my favorite movie of the year, again, because of the big dumb world that it's in, was Furiosa.
Hmm.
And
Yes.
I'm sad that that got nothing and just kind of got
Nothing.
Hmm.
swept under the rug as a movie in
Especially
general.
especially after Fury Road was the win leader and I think the nomination leader the year it came out.
Yeah,
The failure of Furiosa to make any money remains to me one
baffling.
of the
Yeah,
strangest phenomena of
Yeah.
2024.
yeah, agreed.
Actually, I just bought it on 4K earlier today because there is a sale, and
Nice.
I was like, I don't own Furiosa yet, and I should because it's great. So there you
It
go.
would have been nice to see like a cinematography race between two movies set in big sand worlds. That would
That
have
would
been
have been
great.
cool. That
Yeah.
would have been super cool. And
Or a visual effects race too. I think
Yeah.
would have been a very strong. That certainly, I don't think Furiosa is not going for realism in the same way as Dune or
No.
convincing environments, but what it's doing with such over the top effects to create this kind of heightened cartoonish apocalypse, I think is just there's nothing else like that up like
no, I
not this
feel like a
year.
year that culminates in a breathless every category Oscar race between Dune 2 and Furiosa is the best possible year, which is why we didn't get it.
Of course.
We
Tim,
instead had to give 13 nominations to fucking Emilia Perez. Yes.
so I want to postulate that perhaps the fact that you don't hate all the nominees and winners anymore is just the fact that we are getting older and we are aging into Oscar voting. The body is voting along with us nowadays. Does that make sense?
It makes sense, although I don't. I think the substance represents a change for the Oscars. I don't
Yeah.
think
It,
they would
you're
not have in the
correct.
past.
Yeah, but I do think that there's something I feel differently towards the Oscars these days than I did as a film student 19-year-old,
Hmm.
like railing against the establishment. I no
Sure.
longer hate the establishment in quite the same way, although there
I
are
will.
things that I hate.
I will say this: the movie Conclave bored me senseless, but
Yeah.
I also kind of really wanted Conclave to win because it's like Conclave should win the Oscar. Conclave is a movie that is well
Hmm.
built. It is solid.
See, this, I feel like you're
It
proving my
worked.
point.
No, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
But like to me, I feel that way. Like at a certain point, like movies that work well need to be given attention, and that's what the Oscars are for. And
That's true.
I kind of, in a way, wish that Conclave had swept the Oscars for that reason.
I actually really kind of wanted Conclave to win production design, because I enjoyed looking at those marble walls more than I expected to
Sure,
for the entire movie. So,
that's fair.
I guess my one big regret would be that was the Beast not submitted by France? Was that the that's why it wasn't eligible for anything, right? At any point this year?
It was not. It was eligible for competitive Oscars in that it came out in 2024 commercially, and basically everything that comes out is. It was not France's pick because France picked Emilia Perez.
Right, of
The
course,
best film of the year.
Yeah. Though, given the Academy's long lack of any use or love for David Lynch, I don't know that The Beast would have been up their alley anyway.
No. They
even had
would have
any-
hated The Beast.
Yeah.
They would have hated it very much. It's my favorite film of the year.
really, I
Oh,
haven't
wow.
seen it.
It's very French.
It's
Oh.
a harrowing watch is the first word that
Okay.
comes to mind for
Yeah,
it.
it is very aggressively French art cinema. And who can say? I mean,
I can roll with that sometimes. Harrowing is selling me less than aggressively French art cinema.
Distressing is another word I would use in a positive sense for me, but yeah.
I would call it a nimble frolic through the life of an AI fantasy land.
Oh, that sounds horrible. Okay.
It's Bertrand Bonello, who is basically if you want your Gaspar Noé to have a bit less specifically
Okay.
sexual
All right.
violence in
Say
it.
no more.
Yes, yeah, and much more about the horror of human isolation and the terror of connection with other human beings, I think.
So that's our Oscar episode. Harrowing, death, pain. But yeah, so thank you both very, very much for coming on board. I'm glad we had a chance to chat about this. Thank you all for listening. Glad to have been able to supply you with this special one-off treat. We do have, again, as I said, we kind of rearranged the schedule a little bit. So next Tuesday will be Mandy's second ever episode of Your Movie Rocks with special guest Brennan Klein, whose voice you surely know from this year podcast. So be sure to check that out. And then the following week, in celebration of the same exact Oscars, Brendan and I will be returning to another hoarder skeleton in the closet of one of the recently anointed Oscar winners for Bride of Alternate Ending. If you want to find out whose skeleton that is, you'll just have to listen to the episode in 2 weeks' time. Thanks as always for listening, and hope to have you come back next time.